Welcome back to the Sister Club. Today's episode is going to be about spreading yourself too thin and feeling pretty much just out of balance and some of the things that you can do to regulate like your entire life. And I decided to come up with a list of things of spending. So a lot of the times when you say the word spending, people think that you're talking about money only, when in reality there's so many things that we consciously and unconsciously spend our everything on. And this is just a list of things to make life easier. And once you understand where you're spending a lot of like your time, effort, we're going to go through the list. Once you figure out where you're spending, you can kind of cut back on some of those areas. Resource number 2 is effort. So I split effort into 2 sections, one mental and the other is physical. So sometimes we like overexert ourselves physically, either whether it's like in your job, in some of your hobbies, in just other things that you're doing, maybe like a personal project. Sometimes I feel like it's very easy to overexert yourself mentally and physically, and it's just going to leave you drained. So understanding where you put a lot of your effort for things. There's so many times that you can work on a project and, not see the result for something that you were hoping for or planning for. And you live and you learn. Like it's important to learn, like, okay, maybe I can try this next time, but give yourself like a little bit of break. That's one thing that I do with a lot of my projects. Like if something doesn't work, I'm like, oh, I put so much energy into that. Like, why didn't I get this outcome? I think that instead of starting right away, it's good to like regroup, take a moment and like go back to the drawing board and say, okay, like I'm not going to take this as a no. I'm going to take this as like, yes, this door is closed right now. So that's at least one direction that it's not going to work. Let me not continue to put my effort there. Let me try something else, right? Like when you're working on a project or you're trying to get a certain outcome for something, you can't keep doing the same thing, like expecting to get a different result. So knowing where to put your effort is a major key because it's going to make life so much easier. The third resource that will help you really balance out your life is energy. Now, this is a tricky one because a lot of the time, by the time that we realize we've spent too much energy on something, it's just too late. Like you only really feel it when you feel drained. So I would say with energy, you kind of want to break it up into like physical and maybe emotional, like the emotional demand of maintaining relationships and maintaining like social circles. Sometimes your social battery just runs out. Like you just don't have the energy, and that's okay. And one thing that I've noticed, especially like having to take a step back and really like nurture myself and spend a lot of time with myself, is that I'm starting to enjoy different things than I have in the past. And for some people, like maybe some people in your past, that might be really uncomfortable for them. Like if you don't want to party anymore, you don't want to party anymore. You kind of put other things in its place, like sleep. Like that's okay, right? If you feel like going out with your friends, maybe a brunch, maybe a nighttime gathering, whatever, that's totally different. But I think energy is a big one because being around the wrong people and just even being a sour, miserable person yourself, like if you are that kind of person, then it's draining. It's draining for you. It's draining for the people around you. It's just not helpful to balancing yourself out. Putting your energy in the wrong places can do you so much harm, and putting it in the right places can also bring you a tremendous amount of growth. Number 4 is attention. Attention is a big one. Where are you placing your attention? What has your attention? For me, I went through a period of like pure detox. So like reality TV, that's not something that I watch anymore. Veganism was a big one. I do eat a lot of junk food. It depends. Like I'll eat it, but it's not a lot. It's not in excess. And even social media. I think that social media is a big detox that a lot of people need and don't really realize that we need it. When I was in college, I actually remember watching a video about the host was Simon Sinek, or he may have been a guest. I don't really remember. But I remember watching that video, and it talked about social media and like millennials. I'm a millennial myself. So when this video came on in class, it really did catch my attention. And he talks about, from what I can remember, I can link it below. But from what I can remember, he talked a lot about like millennials and how we've become very like right now, want everything right now. Like you want a person, go swipe on like some dating app or whatever. You want food and you don't want to cook it, no problem, go get like Uber Eats. We've become very like right now mindseted, and it's a very, I think it can be borderline destructive, because now we're in like a space where you're like, oh, you didn't answer my text in 5 minutes. Like, I don't even know where my phone is half the time. Like, if we're being really honest. And that's another thing, like paying attention to certain things. Like, I personally have Instagram to somewhat stay connected. I'd prefer to meet up with my friends like in person. But I've had instances where, maybe I have my business profile, I have my personal profile. I'll post something that was automated on my personal profile, and people are like, you didn't answer me. Like, why didn't you answer me? You're online and you can't even answer me. And I'm like, this is actually an automated post because I don't consciously want to spend a lot of time on social media. Like when I watched that video with Simon Sinek speaking about it, I completely changed the way that I behave on social media. Like I started to implement like time limits on certain apps. Like there was so many things that I did differently. Every couple of months I take a break just to kind of gather myself, and like when I come back, people are like, oh my God, what's wrong? What happened to you? Oh my gosh, are you okay? Nothing's wrong. I just wanted a break. Like you can't even, it's like, social media has become like a second reality. It's actually it's getting kind of scary and no one's talking about it. But social media has become an alternate reality. And I feel that it's important that we in real life foster genuine connections, build trust, physically see our friends if we're capable. Like those things are super important. Resource number 5 on something that you need to balance is your emotional resilience. So your ability to recover from setbacks, your ability to manage stress. Those things are so important because this is a resource that can get, if undealt with, can get really run down. Once it's run down, you kind of have to regulate your emotions. There's so many things that go into emotional balance, and without dealing with all of these things, without being able to recover from stress, like stress literally kills. That was one of my biggest takeaways in what I learned in psychology for my first year. Stress absolutely can kill you, and it always presents itself physically eventually. So you might be sick without knowing why. Like it's more of an emotional, like stressful situations can really take a toll on you. And to be honest, I don't know the research yet. I'm still in my first year, but I think a lot of it can be spiritual sometimes too, starting in the area of spirituality, and then it presents itself physically. So being able to recover from setbacks is a huge one as well. That's something that if you kind of stay down, you're not really going to see a lot of progress, and it can be very dangerous for any goals that you have in your future, any emotional things that you need to heal from. Staying down and having that ability to get back up again and say like, okay, you know what, life chin checked me, but I'm okay. Super key. So number 6 is your social capital. So this is, I want to say, your entire network. So this is kind of like where you're spending, I guess not where, but who you're spending the most of your time with. So is it with like healthy family members? Is it in a healthy environment? Is it around healthy friends that you can grow with? Like it's one thing to love somebody, but to grow with them and to be able to achieve your goals, and like where you're placing your energy and who you're placing like your energy into. Your network is a major part of that, because you are basically the sum of like the 5 people around you. those people that you spend the most time around are who you're likely to turn into and like become. You're going to become very much like them. So you want to really analyze your social circle and say, okay, I spend my time with these are the people that I spend my time with the most. Do I really want to become like them? Like, would we switch places? Right? It's okay to, have friends from all walks of life, but when it comes to your goals and where you want to be in life, it's really important to analyze that and see if those things align. Number 7 is your cognitive spending. This resource is a major key. This is actually one of the resources where when I have a client in my chair and their hair is, this is the number one sign I always see it, is shedding. It's always like a high stress, like brain involving job. And just thinking, they're constantly thinking about things, they're constantly problem solving, they're constantly making important decisions. Having to do that all the time is very stressful. Sometimes you just want to like kick back and do nothing. Like when you have, these are the people that like when you go on vacation, you just want to rest. You don't want to think. You don't even want to blink too hard. Like spending too much of your cognitive resources, that's when people will ask you a question and you're just like, nothing. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Like that's the kind of energy. You can't even answer. By the time you get home, you can't even answer questions. Like constantly dealing with like depleting yourself cognitively is very dangerous. Resource number 8 that you might find yourself spending. This is one of the things I think in my first year of psychology, it was called like background stressors. I'm not really sure that, I don't really remember the term. I remembered it so I could take my exam, but I think it was background stressors, and I'm gonna call it patience just for this segment. So this is like your ability to tolerate like delays, like traffic. Like how often do you get like road rage and you're just stuck in bumper to bumper traffic and you feel like you're gonna like, you're like, you're gonna like bite your own lip off. I'm guilty myself sometimes. And just being able to like overcome obstacles, stuff like that. So it's like, can you do those things without becoming heavily agitated? Not a lot of people can. So if you are a person who doesn't like delays, doesn't like obstacles, doesn't like any of that kind of stuff, it's important to work on patience, because I feel at this point, I feel like everyone's just running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Like we're just all doing different stuff, so doing different things at different times, like all so many things at the same time. Like people are stressed, so just give yourself some grace, give other people some grace, be patient. Being patient is something that you actually have to work on. Tip number 9 is willpower. So this one I think a lot of people struggle with, myself. It's almost like having the self-control, and you basically have to develop like some sort of resistance to giving into temptations, like doing things that are not good for you. So willpower is a really tricky one, because I think that there's a huge spiritual element. Like God gave us the gift of free will, and having the gift of free will, sometimes it will feel like a gift and sometimes it will not. Sometimes it can do you so well, and sometimes it can really harm you. So I think willpower is something that's got to be worked on spiritually for sure. Number 10 is your creativity. This is where you're generating new ideas, you're developing your artistic expression. This is one that I find myself almost like a writer's block, but a hair version. Sometimes it takes a lot of you to generate and, more importantly, execute new ideas that you have. Bringing something from your mind into the physical like world is very difficult. And when you don't see like the signs of it working immediately, it's very easy to get I guess frustrated and disappointed. But also taking time to kind of recharge your artistic battery is very important. Like seeking new forms of can't talk today. Seeking new forms of inspiration is so important if you're a creative person, because as fun as creativity is, you can get drained from it. Tip number 11 is your mental health. How are you really doing? If you need, you could pause the video right here and write it down. Take a moment of reflection, because there are so many in your face stressors. There are so many background stressors. There are so many things constantly happening in this world that are bringing people so much high levels of anxiety. So it's important to really sit down and reflect. And if you need, it is so important to go and get help. Because sometimes by the time you realize that you need help with your mental health, you should probably have been there like 2-3 months earlier. And there's nothing wrong with taking your time, because better late than never. But if you're feeling mentally overwhelmed, definitely go get help. Go see a psychologist if you need. Very important. Number 12 is your spiritual energy. I saved the best for last, because this is the one thing that is going to tie everything together. Once you strengthen your connection to God, you are literally unstoppable. It is so important to dedicate time to like meditating on God's word, reading your Bible, really praying like without ceasing. Those things are so important. Finding fellowship, finding ways to connect with people who are also connected to God. So when you ask questions, you're not going to seem like you're losing your mind. It is so important what you do with your spiritual energy above all of those other things. So this was my list of 12 non-financial resources that could possibly be depleting your energy. If you need help, definitely seek it out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I will attach all of my Instagram handles and everything in the information box. And that's all for today. Take care.